Welcome back into Judica County Radio. Your host, Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer. Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. They're the managing partners and practicing attorneys here in the great state of North Carolina. Remember, Whitaker and Hamer, your law firm for life. Office is located Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay-Varina, Gastonia, and in Morehead City. I'm Morgan Patrick, consumer advocate. We go back and forth on the legal topics each and every week. There's also question and answer, so a lot to get to today. Josh, let's start off. You want to go Trump or you want to go legal sports betting?
Let's talk about Trump. That's always polarizing. Our numbers seem to go up when we talk about Trump. I don't know if it's people that like Trump or people that don't like Trump, but they go up a little bit.
Donald Trump?
Yeah.
I'm just clarifying.
So again, we say this all the time. Me and Joseph are not here to play favorites. Just kind of look at it as abstractly as we can, arbitrarily as we can. So Trump has some legal challenges ahead of him, former President Trump, and one of them is what the media talks about, the New York fraud case. And have you guys been following that at all? You know what's going on in that one? No.
I see the headlines, but it's just a kind of a broad brush.
So this is, New York and New York City have some of the toughest business laws, almost to in my opinion, almost to the nth degree. You almost can't violate some of these laws if you try, but that's where this is happening. And you've got these fraud charges against Trump, and we're going to oversimplify it for our purposes today. But basically the crux of the argument, and we have a lot of clients that do this, Joseph, but if you work a lot with banks, right? A lot of people who are in the real estate world, who own commercial real estate, and of any size, Trump has, the big hotels and the golf courses and things like that. But even if you just have small commercial space, or you have investment property, and you have a banking relationship with a bank, a lot of times every year, if they've got mortgages out to you, if they got commercial loans, they ask you for what's called a personal financing statement. And a personal financing statement is really, it's got to be based in some reality, but it's your opinion of your worth, right? So they're going to ask you where all your bank accounts, what do you have in your bank accounts? You got life insurance. How about your automobiles? And then they'll ask you about your real estate value. And so they ask you basically what do you think this is worth? And then, what do you owe on it? And they try to get a net value, but it's your idea of your personal worth.
And it has to be based in some element of reality, right?
You
but
can't
at
just
the same
completely.
time, they're not asking you to go and get, fully vetted appraisals on these properties. That's just not the way it works in practice.
So
in our experience.
So they're asking you. You can't fabricate it. You can't make up assets.
Yeah.
But again, you're not going to. The bank's going to get an appraisal if they're concerned about it, right? You're not going to get an appraisal. So some people just get it straight out of their books, right? This is what we got it on the books for. This is what we paid for it. Some people use tax value. Some people know the market and say, well, if I sold this today, I could make this, So it's your personal financing statement, and it's a component of what the bank will use to lend to you, right? So this really doesn't come into play if if you own your house and you went and you got a mortgage with the credit union or Wells Fargo or whoever you got your mortgage through. This doesn't really come into play. This is really for people who have a lot of assets that might need a mortgage, or they might need commercial loans. But so not everybody deals with these personal financing statements. It's not something that everybody plays with every day or sees. But where these charges come from is basically they say Trump improperly inflated the values that his company put on these personal financing statements that went to a bank to get commercial loans. And so every year, and I think they said 8 years or 9 years or
11 years.
However long, 11 years.
Yeah, I did check out that part.
But that's it. And the banks kind of have testified hey, we don't really rely on those. If we have any questions, we get our own appraisals. We have our internal process. We don't lend to money. And these loans were paid back with interest. The bank made money on it. And New York City decided that they would. I don't know how they got wind of this. I really don't know the facts on how it came up, but that's the basis of their charges. You inflated this. Yeah. You got a loan that maybe you wouldn't have got otherwise, and that's the fraud. But there's
and I think it's important to note too. One of the things that I did read is that the New York's anti-fraud statute says that a finding of fraud doesn't require specific intent to deceive or that money is actually lost,
Isn't that nuts?
Which is nuts, yeah, because we think as attorneys, we always think in terms of damages. Like, it's what kind of actionable claim do you have without damages? Like, and I tell folks all the time, you don't have damage, what's the point, right? So yeah, it's nuts, man. It is nuts.
It's nuts because in North Carolina, fraud. I mean, the basis to fraud. There's different types of fraud, but there's got to be some intent to deceive, whether by telling somebody a lie or withholding information that would have cleared it up. Like you've got to make an overt act to do something to get somebody else to act. So you're trying to defraud someone out of something.
I'd be super bummed out, man, if I am convicted of something fraudulent when I had literally zero intent to deceive anyone and no one lost any money, man. Like, it's nuts.
That's negligence, right? I mean, that's just making a mistake.
But like, even with negligence, like even in a case of negligence, if you have no damages, what case do you have?
Oh yeah, true. But like, if you don't have intent to deceive, it just boggles my mind that law's on the books, and it boggles my mind, they've quoted a lot of attorneys, and I think I saw an AP article where they quoted an attorney who has sued Trump before for violating other real estate, like, tenant landlord type laws and stuff. So they went around and interviewed a lot of attorneys. The AP did in this story I read recently. They were like, "This is terrible, right? This is a bad precedent, and by the time this gets to air, there may already be a judgment. Right now, the judgment is pending when we're sitting down to record in the studio. But the rumor is that the judge is going to find him guilty of this, and it'll get appealed, and this will get kicked out of court super fast, in the Court of Appeals or the Supreme Court. So we're all kind of wasting our time because once this gets to a very non-partisan, anyway. But yeah, fraud without intent and without damages. You don't have a damaged party.
Yeah, no one's
the bank's
alleging
testified.
Damages. They're like, we got paid, man. The bank's
Yeah.
elected to lend him this money. Like, that's the thing that I don't fully understand. And you see a lot of folks. I've seen a lot of people in the high end business community that provide a lot of these personal financial statements, and they've dealt with loans of this type. Talking about how this is not unusual, right? Like, it's not unusual. The bank is adequate. Even if they are lending him this money, they're going to be adequately collateralized to where if it goes up, if it goes bottoms out, they're going to be okay. Like, they're making sure that they're taken care of, So it's nuts, man.
Yeah, if you're one of those people that thinks the world's out to get former President Donald Trump, this should be your Exhibit 1, because this doesn't make sense to me as a North Carolina attorney. Like, none of this would ever come up in a North Carolina court. You'd be thrown out, immediately. And so I think, we live in a world where if you ask questions about certain things, you're kind of branded a certain way. And so I think a lot of people are afraid to talk about certain things in public, or are afraid to do certain things certain ways. But this one throws up all kinds of red flags, and people who know what it's about. Like, I think most people just see the little 30 seconds on the news, and they don't really know what a personal financing statement is. They've never really had to fill one out. It all sounds bad when you say it, what the state, but like in the real world, it's just kind of it's not even like, I don't even know who thought this was a good idea. Like, and that law is crazy.
The whole thing, man, is it could be, right? Like, if because we're unbiased, dude. We don't care, right? Like, ultimately, we come into this and we don't care about anyone other than each other. Obviously, we care about each other deeply. But
I care about you, Joe.
Exactly. But like, we're
Josh.
We're perfectly neutral, man. And so if you look at this, like, I could see, if you just look at the plain facts, like, I don't think that it's necessarily disputed that it seems like he inflated some values and made some misrepresentations about things. And we're not saying that's a good thing, right? But again, who suffered from this? Like, where are the damages? That's the part that really gives you pause, because it's just, I don't know, man. But he did have one line, man, that I will commend. He had a great quote. And it was kind of just pulling the reverse Uno card. You ever heard of pulling the reverse Uno card out? And his quote was, "What happened here, sir, is a fraud on me." And it's like, you imagine you're charged with fraud, and you're like, no, this is fraud.
Well, the judge in this case has really run his court. I'm not familiar with the judges in New York I'm a North Carolina attorney. But the judges handled I mean, and it's a big case, and I'm sure Trump's not the easiest person to have in your courtroom, but I think the judges made a lot of questionable decisions on how he's run the case and what he's let in and what he's not. You know, it's all weird from an attorney's perspective, just looking at it. You know, but if I was one of those people that thought Trump was getting a raw deal all the time, this would be exhibit number one, because you can't even point to a case like this. I've never even heard of a case like this before, you know, and for it to get this far and everybody to feel this confident that there's going to be a judgment just seems a little crazy. But what do I know?
A lot.
I tell you, it's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out. By our next program, maybe we're going to know something. But it kind of sounds like you guys are both in the boat of it's a much ado about nothing. And we'll see how it all plays out. Judica County Radio, we are going to get to the sports betting. We're going to have to wait for a little bit. We're going to do some question and answer coming up on the other side, and then we will talk about what is coming, and that is sports betting in the state of North Carolina. Again, you're listening to Judica County Radio. Your hosts are Josh Whitaker and Joe Hamer, managing partners, Whitaker and Hamer Law Firm. Offices located Raleigh, Garner, Clayton, Goldsboro, Fuquay, Varina, Gastonia, and in Morehead City. If you've got a legal situation you're facing and you need questions answered, I've got a phone number for you, 800-659-1186. That's 800-659-1186. Leave your contact information, briefly what the call is about, and an attorney with Whitaker and Hamer will be in touch. And you can always send your questions to the show. We'll answer them on a future broadcast. Email is info@judicacounty.com. That's info@judicacounty.com. We've got Q&A coming up next.